It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As we move into a Tuesday, Gary, what's happening?
I got to start out with this audio cut here. This is from ABC's Good Morning yesterday.
All right.
Wow, anti-Semitism.
We haven't seen any of that.
Wow. I mean, it's wow. I mean, it's gone up that much. Wow. I mean, it's just. Here's part of it from yesterday.
Yeah.
But there is heightened concern about anti-Semitic attacks in the U.S. Our Chief Justice Correspondent, Pierre Thomas, has more on that. Good morning, Pierre.
Michael, good morning. This Colorado case is so chilling, and it comes less than 2 weeks after another suspect in Washington, D.C. assassinated 2 staff workers from the Israeli embassy. And the fact that the suspect in the Boulder case allegedly said, "Free Palestine," which is precisely what the suspect said in Washington, has the attention of everyone in law enforcement across the country. Remember, it was only a few weeks ago that the Pennsylvania governor's mansion was firebombed on the first night of Passover by a man who was upset by Governor Josh Shapiro's stance on Gaza. This morning, police in D.C. and New York responding to the Colorado attack with stepped-up security at Jewish facilities. And the number suggests it's for good reason. Both the FBI and the Anti-Defamation League have documented a stunning rise in acts of hate targeting Jewish people since the October 7, 2023 terror attack in Israel. The ADL is tracking data showing such a dramatic, whopping surge, 893% in the last decade, with the number of incidents nearly tripling between 2022 and 2024, Rebecca.
An 893% increase. That is a stunning statistic.
It's like she's shocked.
They're just learning about all this.
What a day it was yesterday. I want to play this. I don't know who this woman is, but this is with Scott Jennings. Tara Palmieri. I don't know who she is, but she's on with Scott Jennings. And, this is what you're going to see now. They're going to try to make a moral equivalency and say, well, the right and the left, they both do violence. Scott Jennings is like, where?
Yeah.
And so what does she go back to? January 6th. He goes,
okay.
5 years ago, she couldn't name anything.
Yeah.
Here we go. This is great. Here we go.
The left has a problem with violence. It is in its heart right now.
I don't think it is only the left. I mean, you have literally seen people on both sides committing violence. I think that the problem is not the left. I think it is the extremes on both sides of the party. And that is what's happening. Like they're the loudest voices, whether the leaders want them or not. And they're the ones who tend to be the most violent. I don't think that's fair to say it's only the left. I mean,
why is it happening? Why do late night comedians go on TV and encourage or coddle or give lip service to this vandalism of what went on with Tesla dealerships and so on? Why are there so many prominent people?
People didn't
like,
get hurt.
I totally get why Luigi Mangione was murdered. Like, why? I don't understand.
Listen, I'm not for vandalism, but
it's more than that. They firebomb these things. Like it's obviously
it's dangerous, but it's happening on both sides.
What person on the right is committing violence today?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, when you're in power, you don't tend to be the ones that are doing that. But I think after they lost the election in 2020, there was a mob and a person died, and it was a riot at the Capitol. It was crazy.
It was a terrible day, and it should not have happened.
It was a horrible day.
And
it's not the
let me
only
just check my
example.
calendar, and it was 5.5 years ago.
Can we also talk about the fact that someone broke into Nancy Pelosi's house and violently beat up her husband?
You're saying that homeless drug addict is a conservative?
Well, I mean, why do you think she was targeted?
Why do I think a literal crazy homeless person in San Francisco did something? I couldn't begin to tell you, but I know it's this. They weren't coming to the Republican Party. People on both sides
have faced assassination attempts. This is a thing that is not just, it's not just a singular party thing. And I don't buy that. Like, it's not a singular party thing. There are radicals on the left and there are radicals on the right.
Wow, she's really working hard on that one, isn't she?
And Scott Jennings
seriously.
he's just sitting there shaking his head. the last part.
Yeah,
of this,
no,
I just can't believe it. I just can't believe it. I won't believe it.
Yeah.
Well, number one, January 6th was a riot that went out of control. There's a difference between a riot that gets out of control and targeted terrorist assassinations.
Where they are targeting people, looking to kill people.
Right. Completely different ball game.
In the recent months and weeks, you have seen them looking to kill people. These are people that clearly are on the left, pro-Hamas, anti-Semites, looking to kill people. The guy over the weekend was looking to kill people.
And had been, this is premeditated, as they've said, for at least over a year, he has been looking to target Jews.
Right.
From what the evidence that they have found, so far on this. And by the way, she used to work for ABC and Politico and stuff like that. Now does this podcast. But it's so poor. Well, you have January 6th. January 6th was a riot. Was a protest, then a riot that got out of control.
Right.
Well, it was a riot.
Right.
Protest that got out of control was a riot. I don't want to be redundant there. Completely different ball game than when you look at, for example, the left on the insurance executive being killed. You have to understand this is, when they deny a claim, it's violence. That was AOC, right?
Yep.
You
have to understand that when people have their claims denied, they see that as an act of violence.
Right.
She's trying to defend what the alleged shooter did.
You were justifying murder. At that particular point. And look, you and I have talked about it. And, they mentioned, the Josh Shapiro thing. Understand, this is why this is a Democrat Party thing. Understand the Democratic Party, and liberals talk about it now all the time. We should have picked Josh Shapiro.
Right.
Walz was horrible.
Right.
We should have picked Josh. They could not pick Josh Shapiro because he's a Jew.
Well, that's the big, as we say, blue whale pod in the living room that they don't want to talk about. They can say it now. Well, we should have. No. Let's talk about the reason you didn't.
Right. Well, but the left is, the Democrats are saying he should be the guy.
Yeah.
And even right now with Josh Shapiro for 2028, they're hesitant to put him on the list.
Right.
Because he's Jewish.
Right.
And again, this goes to, the one thing Republicans should hit harder, they should connect all the dots with the identity politics of the Democratic Party, which is judging people by groups and not individuals. This has been going on for years. It's been going on for decades with the Democratic Party. It is immoral. It's evil. It's racism. And so what the hell do you think you're going to get when this continues to do it? And then, for example, when you have, the false story that Israel shot civilians in Gaza. They got it from Hamas. So the talking points now to the media, the liberal media, is what Hamas has to say.
And it's been that way since October 7th.
Yeah.
Officials in Gaza, it's Hamas.
Hamas. And Bill Maher went off on it. I can't play it because there's too much cursing. And he talks about the Democratic Party. It's, the CNN's been, shocked by the numbers and everything else. Well, think about, he was talking about Democrats. He was also talking about young people, young liberals out there. He goes, parents, stop coddling your children who believe that the United States is worse than Hamas.
Right.
And he said, because, you can, I forgot what he goes, you can order something and have it to your door in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
This is the United States of America. They're Hamas. You have no idea what the hell you're talking about, yet the Democratic Party and the establishment, which would be the parents, coddles the insane children who have no perspective. They live in a place where technology and freedom has made it incredibly easy to just assume that these things happen everywhere.
Right.
And they don't. And then
they live in a world where they can just repeat things that other people are saying, and that's how you take a stand. You click a like button, or you hit repost on something, and you just repeat something, and that's all you have to do in order to stand for something. In order to fight, just click that little heart.
Yeah. I mean, it's and it's going to be interesting to see. I did see that somebody on the squad came out and said, well, this is wrong. Well, because they're just seeing, I mean, the numbers are just tanking for them across the board on everything right now. America looks at it and go, you guys have absolutely nothing to offer the American public whatsoever. You've got nothing. You know, for all the mistakes that Republicans have made over the years, the public's looking at them and going, okay, yeah, you make mistakes, but at least I understand that you have a semblance of sanity and you want the country to be great.
Right.
I have no idea what the hell the other party wants. What the hell do you want?
Well, it gets back to not having any real convictions. When you live in a world where the protest sign is a dry erase board, whatever the cause is today, boom, we'll go for it.
Well, to see where she actually tell me where's the right wing? The attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband.
Yeah. Wow. Nobody else is making that case.
No, but it's like that's how poor, and it's like is that did you do your show prep, and that's the preparation that's what you came up with? All that prep led you to that?
Well,
really?
again, but this is again exactly what we were just saying. She's part of a generation that doesn't have to work too hard, and so why would they work hard on getting the facts? Why would they work hard if you don't have any convictions? Then you can't back up what you're saying. And that's further proof of that. That's further evidence right there. Well, Nancy Pelosi, January 6th. These are weak arguments. What happened over the weekend was planned. And it was targeting people with the intent of killing them, of terrorizing. The shooting in D.C., the same thing. These people that pull these things off, that plan these things and pull these things off, believe they're going to be martyrs because the left has a habit of creating martyrs of them, creating heroes in them, in defending them. And when a healthcare CEO is gunned down in cold blood for no reason, they make up their reason, including lawmakers, somebody who actually is in charge of governing people's lives. That's who the left is. That's who the Democratic Party is.
And no type of understanding the syntax, the accent, the interest of football or trucks. None of that is going to get people to vote for you.
Right.
The people look at the Democratic Party right now, and you look at the radicalism that they espouse. And as we've said before, I think the Republicans need to connect the dots more, and they need to use the words as we do. The identity politics is racism. You're judging people by groups and not individuals. I'd be out there I'm out there every day, but if I was a politician, I'm saying this is 2025, and the Neanderthal thought, I'd be saying this, if I was a Republican, this is a Republican Party. You may not agree with everything, but what we're saying is, here's what we believe, everybody. You're aboard if you believe this. Here's what we believe. We may make mistakes, but our goal is to make America great. That's what we want to do. We want to make it more free. We want to make it great. We want people to have a great quality of life. If you're on board, come with us. And then go after the Democrats and say, let's look at it. Identity politics. They know it's a problem. And then explain it to the American people. They are judging people by groups and not individuals. Every one of us knows that's Neanderthal thinking. That goes back 100, 150 years ago. It has no business being part of the modern mainstream politics today. That racism has to go. The anti-Semitism, the racism, has to go. The misogyny of the radical transgender movement has to go. They don't care about anybody. They just want to divide, divide, divide. It's not working for them, and for some reason, they keep doubling down on it. But they need to pound it, and they need to pound it harder, I think.
Tim Walz wasn't the permission structure for men doing anything except getting tampons in their bathroom. The party, the Democratic Party, is the permission structure for making excuses for violent behavior, including murder. That's the permission structure that's in place right now on the left. Well, and it's very much in play.
Well, that's the idiocy. I mean, you think about it, AOC, Tim Walz. I mean, these are the people that they're getting the most press, and the left is loving it. Mm-hmm. They're like, the Democrats are like, Tim Walz kids. Now, you may have some behind the scenes going, I wish he'd shut up.
Yeah.
But the fact is, they're the ones that are out there, and you look at it and you go, these people are kooks.
Right. What is he saying? What does he keep talking about?
Yeah.
Beating people up? Being meaner? We need to be meaner?
Because that's the problem with the Democratic Party. They've been too nice to Trump and too nice to the Republicans.
Too nice to Trump, yeah. We need to be meaner. Did you read the headlines over the weekend, Walls?
866-90-RED-EYE.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Every driver knows the cost of replacing tires is a major expense. What if you could save on tire costs without sacrificing performance or safety? Consider retreads, a sustainable, cost-effective way to rack up your miles. The lower price tag of retreads might make it feel like you're sacrificing performance, but many of the quality retreads available today have proven to perform comparable to new tires. Plus, dependable tire performance also has to do with choosing the right retreads for your application and adopting a tire maintenance routine. Determining the position in which your retreads will be placed and what application they'll be used in should be the first steps you take when purchasing tires, whether new or retreads.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. I'm just reading some of the headlines here. Male dominates California Girls High School Track Championship, exposing absurdity of the state's half measures, as we had said when they announced what the half measures were. We'll get to that coming up here in a little bit. More on the anti-Semitism around the United States right now and how the left has been propping that up since October 7th, so we'll get to that. And I wasn't surprised, again, when that Tara Palmieri tries to make it a moral equivalence, that the same thing is happening on both sides. It's like, where?
Right.
Where?
Right.
And when you have to go to Nancy Pelosi and make that case that the attacker of Nancy Pelosi's husband was because of politics when the guy clearly was nuts.
Right.
It's like, sorry, you don't have anything. And then when she went, well, I just refuse to believe. I just refuse to believe. I just refuse to believe. Well, yeah, you refuse to believe that sex is designated by your chromosome makeup. Mm-hmm. So what you and by the way, this is something that Scott Jennings said yesterday. He said, look, everything's interconnected. Something that we have said. Everything's interconnected. And so when you can't connect the dots, and when you're insane on these 80-20, 90-10, 97-3 issues out here, and the American public knows that you're BSing. When you attempt to convince the American public that the border was secure under Biden.
Right.
When you attempt to continually try to convince people that a man can be a woman if the man says so. Well, once you lose total credibility there, you lose total credibility across the board.
Exactly.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. And how you doing? I know we didn't greet each other when we started the show. It's just, the insanity of the anti-Semitism here in the United States promoted by the left is just, it's completely and totally out of control. It's something that Republicans need to pound on because Democrats won't. And it's reprehensible what was happening. We've seen the number of attacks drastically increase. We've seen where, assassinations, terrorist attacks are increasing. And we see that still the mainstream media, and this goes to the story the other day, that Israeli soldiers were just shooting innocent people in Gaza, which was, there's, again, no evidence that happened.
Right.
And it came from, again, they're still doing the exact same thing as they did on October 7th, which is, well, the Palestinian Information Center. It's Hamas!
Yeah.
And they just...
the liberal activist media has been using all of the Hamas propaganda as if it was being written by journalists that are covering the story there in Gaza. That's not what's happening. It's all coming from Hamas. And they're just repeating it as fact. Hamas has got to be looking at this going, what changed? We used to have to fight in terms of propaganda. We used to have to go out of our way to, and the U.S. is making, the media in the U.S. is making it so simple for us. We even have radicals that support us in the U.S.
Well, the Washington Free Beacon had a story. Hamas terrorists said group collaborates with U.S. campus protesters. We have our own people everywhere. A Hamas operative who held Israeli civilians hostage in Gaza says Hamas works with anti-Israel protesters and the media to spread anti-Semitism in the United States, according to a federal lawsuit filed Friday. These three former hostages in a lawsuit say in a lawsuit that one of their captors told them that Hamas in Gaza was coordinated with its allies, including its allies in the media and on college campuses, to foment hate against Israel and the Jews. The Times of Israel reported the captors showed him a news report with stories and pictures of the Columbia protest and the encampment, the court filing says. With the news reports on, the captors told him, you see, we have our own people everywhere, the filing goes. Then they told him that Hamas has an army operating out of Gaza that focuses specifically on the media and sending Hamas propaganda and messaging throughout America and all around the world. And, you look at it right now. Anything, that's why the whole thing with the Jake Tapper book. And we believe part of writing the book was to CYA. Mm-hmm. And CYA for the media. But as we said, and I remember you and I think the time when we finally had it was after the Mueller report. And you had Republicans out there saying, we hope the media now learns their lesson and the media tries to be more, understands the concepts of journalism. We just said, stop doing that, Republicans.
Right.
They're as far from a journalist as a football player is from a pickleball player.
Yeah. Right.
It's a completely different. They're not journalists. Don't ask them to be something that they're not. They're political activists. They feel no shame. They don't care if they get a story wrong. They don't, all they care is, does the movement go forward? If they get caught lying, nobody cares. Do you see any shame from the Jake Tapper book from anybody in the media?
No.
And you and I talked about this when I first became a radio talk show host back in October of 1989.
1989.
1989,
Yeah, make
not
it sound older.
1880. Right.
Yeah.
Well, radio hadn't been invented 100 years before.
Yeah,
that.
1989. It sounds long ago.
1989.
1989.
God, it really does seem like a long when you say that.
Doesn't it? Doesn't it?
You don't say 1989. It's 1989.
Yeah, 1989. And when I say it that way, all of my thoughts of that year go to black and white. It's weird.
Well, we didn't have widescreen TV, did we?
No, we didn't. No, we didn't.
And no cell phones.
Right.
Well, I mean, Don Johnson did on Miami Vice,
Yeah.
but
HD still stood for Home Depot.
But I remember the reason, and people know the story. I didn't want to be a talk show host. The owner of a station forced me to do it.
Mm.
It's the last thing I ever wanted to do, ever. It's amazing because here I am 35 years later, almost 36 years later, still doing it. So, but I remember one of the reasons I didn't want to do it was if I got something wrong, I would feel shame.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get into this business to get something wrong and feel shame. I went in, to
shame other people.
To have fun.
Which for me is shaming other people.
Yeah, that's right. I wanted to be that morning DJ that called somebody up and made an ass out of them. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have fun. I can still remember when I went to what I call my first real job in Fort Walton Beach, Pensacola. And all I could think of is, I'm working at a rock station in Florida. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
It's going to be, it's going to be so much fun. There's going to be parties, women, everything. And it was like a hell of a lot of hard work. It was like, I didn't expect that. I wanted to have fun, but it was more fun than doing. It was actually a lot of fun. But the last thing I wanted to do was talk radio where I don't know what to say. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do? And if I get something wrong, number one, not only would I feel shame, but if I did it where anyone could hear me, any of my friends or family, they would have no hesitation in coming up to me and saying, you're a complete idiot.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a clue. And I didn't want that to happen. You feel that. I feel that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to get something wrong. And they don't care because we're more journalists than they are. You may disagree with our opinion, but the last thing that we want to do is start commenting on something that isn't true. They don't care.
No, they don't.
They don't care.
They really don't.
They're political activists, and if they get something wrong, they simply move on to go, okay, yeah, but we moved it a little bit forward. We went back, but we took 2 steps forward and a step back. Or we took 3 steps forward and 4 steps back. Okay, well, let's try another political activist narrative out there.
Right.
They don't care. Don't pretend that they're journalists. Don't hope that they're going to be journalists. If one thing Jake Tapper book proves, nobody really. They may be a little bit upset that they got caught, and the person who they got caught by the conservatives, but they don't care.
Right.
But the person who caught them this time and explained it again, because one of the things I love about the book is, because you and I said it, and then so many conservatives have said it, we didn't need the book.
Right.
We already went through it.
We lived through it.
We lived through it. We went through. No, we don't need the book.
You're repeating things that we noticed.
Right. The book only made it so the liberal media has to cover it.
Right. Yep.
But they're political activists. They have no concern about the truth. And I can't tell you, you could sit there and say, what drives them to their identity politics? What drives them to the insanity and evilness of judging people by groups and not individuals? What drives them to the evil of the radical transgender movement, the misogyny that exists in there that is just absolutely pure evil, to intimidate and bully biological women and make up the dumbest, as we were playing yesterday, the audio cuts, the dumbest arguments that you could possibly ever imagine. And then you see the hate and the filth of anti-Semitism. You know, you can look at the world and we know that racism has existed. We know what Nazism did. It's just really interesting, and this is why I even want the Republicans to be stronger, is remember, the people that actually promote what the Nazis did are the ones that are accusing the other side of being Nazis.
Right.
Don't ever forget that. And pound back. I mean, the anti-Semitism, the filth and the hate that exist in there, I don't know what drives people to that point. And I don't know if I'm really as concerned as what drives people to that point. I think it's an interesting sociological question and always has been. Is it racism? Is it jealousy? Is it envy? Do they really believe that they're superior? Some of the elitists, you might think, well, actually, they do believe they're superior.
Yeah.
And whether it's because of their race or whatever, I don't know. But I'm less concerned with that than I am eliminating it.
Right.
Eliminating anti-Semitism and targeting and attacking rhetorically, want to make sure, rhetorically, every single day promote the filth and the evil that the left believes on anti-Semitism. It's the worst in what we produce as human beings. And the fact that it's thriving in the United States of America and the Democratic Party doesn't come down and just slam the door shut and say, stop it. The fact that you can actually, in 2024, going back to last year, actually as a Democrat come out and publicly say that we can't have Josh Shapiro because he's a Jew, and people that support the Democratic Party won't support a Jew in 2025 is so evil and Neanderthal. I guess there are words that describe it, but you feel like there ought to be more powerful words.
Right.
That just slams the door shut on this crap.
Look at how I believe the entire, and I'm sure it was in the state, it was reported and they did follow-up stories and everything else. But the firebombing of the governor's mansion.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. And the liberal activist media on the national scene, they reported that. It was in the cycle for a few days. But the conversation about it never happened. And it's, what do you hear from them? Oh, well, both sides. Well, both sides. Both sides. They go to this both sides. It's like some kind of default in their brain that they have to jump to. And I'll never forget several years ago talking to Sean Spicer after he left the White House, but during Trump's first term. And I called the White House press corps activists. I said, these aren't reporters. They're not journalists. They're activists. And he stopped and he said, I've never heard it phrased that way. And I thought, well, thanks a lot for not listening to our show, Sean. I was actually doing it. I was filling in on WBAP morning show with Hal J when I was interviewing him. But because when you mentioned after the whole thing with Mueller, maybe the media will get back to inside the Beltway. It that conversation was still going on, even into Trump's first term. All of these things, and it wasn't long after the Mueller thing, and it still was thought that these are journalists and they need to, and talking as if there was going to be this kind of turnaround, or that they were getting something wrong, that the media was getting something. No,
right?
They're activists.
Yes. Yeah.
They are. This is by design. This is who they want to be, and when you say it to someone that way and they've never thought of it, they do get that look in their eye like, oh, I've never thought of that. You really have to work hard at telling people that.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Latest polls on some interesting things coming up here in just a little bit. Plus, Ukraine's attack on Russia and what that might mean. And I did find the audio that I wanted from the Jason Alexander podcast with Jeff Skunk Baxter, who for the last 40 years, I mean, he's the guitar player, played with Steely Dan, the Doobie Brothers, and, great musician. But 40 years ago, sort of by accident, he got involved in military consulting because of what he did in the studio.
Right.
Things he did in the studio. And it's
it's
a fascinating story. But he analyzed Russia, and I saw this a couple of months ago, and I said, wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And with Russia and the Ukraine, everything else going on, I think it's appropriate to play it coming up next.
Good.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning, as always. You know, one of the things, the narratives that have come out, well, I won't say narratives, but the questions and discussions that have come out since the Ukraine attack, the drone attack on the Russian warplanes, is, just how big of an enemy and the potential for military might is. I almost said the Soviet Union is. I'm showing my age. Is Russia? How could they miss this? How could you get that close to so many planes? How could you pull that off? It makes you think, could you pull that off in the United States?
And this was deep into 3,000 miles from Ukraine. This is deep into Russian territory.
Right. This is like attacking a military installation in Omaha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Well, off at Air Force Base.
Yeah.
Which is a highly secured Air Force base. I was born there, but it's where Bush ended up on 9/11.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you look at this and the Wall Street Journal had an article on it, and it did make me, and we'll get to that in just a second, but it did make me think of when I was a machinist, when I was worked at a gear manufacturer. And this goes back to, when did I start? I think of when I started, 79. So we're in the midst of the Cold War, and I worked at a precision gear making company, Riley Gear. It's now in Florida. It used to be in North Tonawanda. They had two plants for a while. Then I think they eventually moved to Florida. Not surprising. And I think all their operations now are in Florida. And I remember when I was there, you would always hear this. The reason that we're going to win the Cold War is because we make better gears than the Russians make. And we can manufacture things and they can't. And so unless they get it outside from someone who can, they're never going to be able to keep up with the United States. And that always sat in the back of my mind. And so we know that they don't have a great manufacturing base even now. We know it's basically oil, natural gas, whatever. That's what they sell. And anything of quality that they make, or the question is, have they improved the manufacturing, or does anything that they get have to be from China or somewhere else that might be a quality manufactured war good? And But we when you looked at what happened here, and you ask yourself, just how sophisticated and technologically advanced are the Russians right now? Wall Street Journal did an article on it yesterday with the questions that are coming up on it, didn't they?
Right, and they go into it because, again, they point out some of the things we pointed out on yesterday's show about what this means for Russia long-term in terms of being a nuclear superpower, because it's unknown what their land-based missile system, their silos, what condition they are in. It really is unknown. Nobody knows. The submarines, that's another question. But if it's accurate that Ukraine was able to take out some of these aircraft, a huge chunk of these aircraft that were capable of delivering those nuclear warheads, then it severely damages the long-term reach of Russia. And we talked about that yesterday, which, again, was part of why I think this reeks of outside help. Some intel from either the U.S., Europe, both, all the above, maybe even some inside intel from Russia, I don't know. But also how far-reaching it was literally into Russia, because those planes had been moved further away from the border. Now, that gave, as they point out in the Wall Street Journal, intel from the U.S. and other parts of the world that gave them a little bit of an advantage, because those planes had to fly so far in order to pull off a strike against Ukraine. So there was a lot of flying involved, and because of that activity, because of where they were keeping them, that really gave intel a little bit of an advantage on Ukraine, knowing when they were going to attack Ukraine and anticipating some of those attacks. This is interesting as to, again, I guess the question, it goes back to the overall question we've had since Putin attacked Ukraine, and maybe even back to Crimea. And that is, what does he have available? I think it was more prominent, really, the conversation about Russia, its outdated fleet. You and I talked about it when you were talking about working and building gears, and you and I were talking during the top of the hour break, that Russia doesn't really build things. These planes are very, very old. Aging planes, not necessarily the worst thing, as they point out in the Wall Street Journal, because we do have some old planes, but because of technology, we're able to update those old planes. Now,
B-52.
Yeah, exactly. They point that out. And in fact, every plan looks at keeping those B-52 bombers in play at least until 2050. And here in the U.S., I mean, think about that.
That'll make them almost 100 years old.
Yeah, that's crazy. But the technology, though, changes, right? And so it isn't there during the Soviet Union days, during the communism days. If you think about communism, it does not nurture innovation. That innovation, if you look at China, that innovation has to be stolen. That they have to. This is why intellectual property rights is not just an issue with the economy. When it comes to China stealing those intellectual property rights, it really is. It goes back to, as is with trade, it goes back to a national security issue. It goes back to the things that we need, the innovation culture, basically, that the U.S. has become and is spread to other parts of the world. With communism, they don't nurture that innovation. And without that innovation, then your national defense system is going to suffer. And so they often have to buy it. They recruit people from the U.S. To work for them, or they steal that intellectual property and try and put it into play. But this severely damages Russia if all of the stories and claims by Ukraine are accurate. And again, it's hard for me to believe that Ukraine pulled this off without at least some help from the intel community globally, maybe to a large extent. You point out how President Trump has been fairly quiet on this whole thing. In fact, over the weekend, hadn't put anything about it. I didn't see Truth Social today, or on Monday, but typically, Trump has something to say about everything, and something this big over the weekend, he was very, very quiet about it. The point being, it benefits the world if indeed Russia has been crippled as a nuclear superpower. It certainly benefits everyone because the threat is then gone. I go back to North Korea and Mike Pompeo going over to North Korea and sitting down with him. I think he had just become Secretary of State, moving from the CIA director position to Secretary of State, but he actually sat down with Kim Jong-un on an Easter Sunday of all days. And I believe that the conversation was likely, look, we monitor everything. In fact, there was a Wall Street Journal article about them trying to sideways launch one of their new Navy ships, and it just went so badly recently. And it was just, you look at the satellite photos, and it's like, oh my gosh, this was a huge embarrassment for North Korea.
Yeah, somebody's not alive because of that.
Well, and they even their own state media put out information that think there were miscalculations and blah blah blah, points to incompetence or mistakes made and everything else. And you don't make mistakes and get away with it and get to keep your life in North Korea. Keep that in mind. But the entire play of who the threats are. China really is our biggest threat. Russia, we have every reason to believe they have the nuclear warheads. The question is, do they have the delivery system necessary, long range, and potentially, it's possible that this action by Ukraine has crippled that capability. It just depends on where their land-based missile system is, with the condition of their silos. That's a complete unknown. Their submarines, that's the entire triad, the planes, submarines, and the land-based system. And if you don't know, and I believe Intel probably knows, but one of the things you can't do publicly is show your hand and tell Russia what you know publicly. That's
right.
Why I go back to the Mike Pompeo thing. If he's sitting down with Kim Jong-un, he can tell him, in that scenario, here's what we know about your entire ability, right, to reach beyond your borders. And if that is known with Russia, and it indeed right now is the case that Putin is severely crippled with his long-term reach with nukes, then that changes the game absolutely, completely, and for a long time. Keep in mind, though, he's got a huge ally in China. What China might be able to provide to him, again, or is providing to him, isn't known. But the intel community, I believe, does know quite a bit. At least they can suspect and put a high probability of what he might be capable of doing. And that all of that will play into the peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. But forget it, even that. This really, for me, isn't so much about Ukraine versus Russia as it is about Russia and their long-term threat against the Western world, against our allies, and, of course, the U.S. And that is what has to be the concern. I think I mentioned this with China. That's my concern when it comes to trade. This is why we absolutely have to be tough on China when it comes to trade, but there has to be a very clear message, and I believe there's some of that going on. I do have the confidence in the Trump administration to convey that, in that we are aware of what they're doing. And we're not going to allow them to have that kind of reach. But again, that's a totally different game. With Russia, they could be crippled, and that would be a good thing. We may never learn that, but if the intel community knows that, and this administration can convey that during any conversation, again, it goes beyond peace talks about Ukraine versus Russia, and it's more about the setting now and resetting the table of Russia versus the rest of the world.
And when it comes to the the administration wanting to make a deal, whether it's Russia and Iran, because you can extrapolate this whole thing out. It would be because I think one of Trump's first instincts, and it's not a bad instinct. I'm not, but anything when you're dealing with a Russia or Iran is a crapshoot.
Yeah,
right. Who knows where they are at that particular point, and we don't know what Trump knows. But one of the first things is that I think an instinct of Trump is, well, everybody wants to do business.
Right. Yeah.
Well, no, they don't. Business is not the most important thing that the Iran mullahs are concerned with.
Right.
Now, if they can do business and it keeps them in power, yeah, they want it.
Right.
But when you look at both Iran and Russia and the foreign policy of the United States, to me, it's pretty obvious, and maybe the president has given Russia all the chances, and now he realizes they don't want peace. And so the only thing that you can do, the only negotiation tactic you have is, we can hurt you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's the one thing with Iran right now. You've got a ton of people saying you cannot let them enrich. You can't even let them temporarily enrich. You cannot do it. You cannot fall into the same mistakes that all the other administrations, Democrat and Republican, have fallen into with negotiating with Iran.
Right.
The only thing that they understand is you'll hurt. We can hurt you bad.
Right.
To offer them the carrot and say, hey, we can do this, is them just extending, their enrichment of uranium in order to get a nuclear weapon.
Right.
We all know it.
Right.
And after the horrendous Obama administration on all of that, I mean, just reprehensible what happened during that, during that time. It's interesting, and that's why I say with Trump being so quiet, if the United States wasn't involved, is it that he's sitting back going, okay, they can do damage on it. Interesting article in National Review saying the country that allegedly had no cards to play keeps finding cards to play.
Exactly.
We'll get to that. Plus, we'll get to an expert on Russia.
Yeah.
Who you may know his name and go, wait a minute, doesn't he play guitar? But he's one of the...
And speaking of China, China Grove.
China Grove, yes. So we'll get to that and more, all coming up. 866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Leased owner-operators should be aware of 4 common revenue myths, lest you fall into the trap of mistaking revenue for profit. Myth 1, concentrate on increasing revenue because costs will take care of themselves. This is not true, as costs are fundamental to the profit equation and the area where owners exert the most control to improve. Myth 2, more revenue per mile is the answer to all problems. Though carrier pay packages differ in structure, revenue per mile really doesn't change much from company to company. But there can be a big difference in miles, overall gross revenue, reimbursements, and fees. Myth 3, all you have to do to be successful is run a lot of miles. In reality, revenue is only half of the profit equation. Costs are the other half. It's possible to generate a lot of revenue, yet spend $1.10 to make every dollar. Myth 4, you can tell how well you're doing by the size of your settlement check. The settlement check is only a part of the success picture. Miles driven, loads hauled, conditions, mechanical problems, time off, and especially costs all have to be considered. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Cronin. I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome in. Good morning. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, we'll continue with our discussion. What does it mean that the successful drone attack that Ukraine had on Russia's warplanes? I'm reading here from National Review, and they take stuff from Bloomberg and Wall Street Journal, whatever, and some of their analysis, what's going on. This is really interesting. In May of 2025, last month, Ukraine demonstrated another technological breakthrough when 2 Russian Su-30 fighter jets were shot down over the Black Sea by AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles launched from naval drones. It was the first time that a crewed jet was downed by missiles fired from uncrewed surface vessels. Naval warfare continues to evolve over the Black Sea. Drones equipped with surface-to-air missiles, machine gun modules, and FPV drone carriers shifted the advantage back to Ukraine. These upgraded drones are relatively sophisticated but still cost-effective, with cost ranging from $250,000 to $300,000 per unit. This is about 5 times cheaper than a Harpoon anti-missile and slightly more than the cost of an Excalibur shell or a Javelin ATGM. And what they're saying is, Russia's moving a lot slower than they want to, and Ukraine's having tremendous success right now.
Listening Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. And just reading here from National Review, the Russians have largely forced Ukrainian forces back out of the Russian territory that the Ukrainian military seized in a surprise attack in August, but for 4 consecutive months, Russians gained less territory than the preceding month. In March, Russia advanced 99 square miles, a landmass roughly the size of the city limits of Sacramento. In April, Russia broke the streak by gaining 166 square miles, a landmass roughly the size of the city limits of Wichita. According to Bloomberg analysis published in May, battlefield data indicated this is on May 21st. Battlefield data indicates that despite a consistent advantage in manpower and steady gains, Putin's military has fallen far short so far of satisfying his war aims. The pace of Russia's main advance in eastern Ukraine has halved since the start of the year, compared with the similar period throughout the end of 2024. On May 28th, Ukrainian long-range drones hit a cruise missile factory outside of Moscow, as well as a drone factory. And it goes the night of the attacks. Russian Defense Ministry claimed it had shot down 296 Ukrainian drones across multiple regions. And they said, but all of that was just a prelude to this past weekend, and then they go into that. But they talk about the advances that Ukraine has made. But really, the shock of this particular attack, which makes you wonder, okay, what is the situation? What is the technological situation when it comes to Russia and war? Where am I here? Let me get so much going on here. This is really fascinating. You and I have talked about this before. A lot of people will know Jeff Skunk Baxter as the guitarist of Steely Dan, and also the Doobie Brothers. Played with both of them. One thing that people don't know, if you've paid attention, you know, but in the mid-'80s, his interest in music recording technology led him to wonder about hardware and software originally developed for military use, specifically data compression algorithms and large capacity storage devices. His next door neighbor was a retired engineer who had worked on the Sidewinder missile program. This neighbor thought Baxter might be interested in getting a subscription to Aviation Week, so he bought him one, provoking his interest in additional military-oriented publications and missile defense systems in general. He became self-taught in this area, and at one point wrote a 5-page paper proposing converting the ship-based anti-aircraft missile into a rudimentary missile defense system. He gave the paper to a California congressman. In his career as a defense consultant began, Baxter received a series of security clearances, so he could work with classified information. In 1995, Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Kurt Weldon, then the chairman of the House Military Research Development Subcommittee, nominated Baxter to the chair of the Civil Advisory Board for Ballistic Missile Defense. Baxter's work, this is really incredible, isn't it, when you think about it? It's just, if you look at him, if you know him and you see him, you go back and you look at the stuff from the 1970s, the Midnight Special, and you see him play, and you're like, that guy's probably one of the smartest guys when it comes to U.S. defense and analyzing
He's going to keep the world safe.
Exactly. It's just, I still get the biggest kick out of saying that. But his work with the panel led him to consulting contracts with the Pentagon's Missile Defense System and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. He consults for the U.S. Department of Defense and the U.S. intelligence community, as well as defense-oriented manufacturers such as Science Applications International Corporation, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, General Atomics Aeronautical Systems Incorporated. He has said his unconventional approach to thinking about terrorism tied to his interest in technology is a major reason government sought his assistance. He goes, we thought turntables were for playing records until rappers began using them as instruments, and we thought airplanes were for carrying passengers until terrorists realized it could be used as missiles, Baxter has said. My big thing is to look at existing technologies and try to see other ways that they can be used, which happens in music all the time and happens to be what terrorists are incredibly good at. He has appeared in public debates and as a guest on, CNN, Fox, whatever, advocating for missile defense. So he's probably somebody, he didn't talk about it here, but we're going to play here, but the Golden Dome and all of that. But it's interesting because he also plays war games.
Oh, yeah.
He's a gamer that takes the enemy's position against the United States. And he talked about that on Jason Alexander. Yes, George Costanza on Jason Alexander's podcast. They wanted to talk to him about his career. Well, his career also is in the military. And let's just hear a couple of moments on this because they asked him to analyze Russia. So here we go.
So Steve, look at the photo. We'll get back to Steely Dan in a minute. We'll get back to Steely Dan and Doobie Brothers. But let's jump ahead for a minute. Because what's fascinating about you, and I heard an interview that you did that blew my mind, where you talked about that you play red team a lot, which means you're the enemy, and you're anti-terrorism. That's the world that you're in. You got to predict what the enemy is going to do and why they're going to do it,
and how they might
do it. There are so many questions there about how do you stay ahead of the technology, et cetera. But I heard you talking about Putin, and a lot of people don't understand who the adversary is. Could you give, for just a moment, talk about Russia, China, North Korea, where we're at with them, and what we may not understand about what their end game is, and how you have to deal with them, because it's in front of everybody's mind right now because of Ukraine, et cetera.
Well, one of my friends, General Hyten, who was vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, we worked together a lot in the Schriever War Games. I used to drive him nuts. I mean, it made him miserable. I was on the red team. That was my job. We were friends, and none of us took it personally. But one day there was a meeting with some of the Joint Chiefs and some of the gamers, and he said, Skunk, I want you to describe Russia for me in 5 seconds. I said, yes, sir. It's a nuclear-armed gas station run by the mafia. And General Hyten went, oh, there you go. Any questions? And in a sense, that's really what it is. They make all their money, I would say 85% of the money that they make comes out of the ground. They make some weapon systems. Some are good, some are not so good. I mean, the Kalashnikov obviously is a fine assault weapon, but their airplanes tend to fall out of the sky. Although they are brilliant aeronautical engineers, manufacturing is not so good. But yeah, they dig everything out of the ground and then they sell it. Oil and gas and coal. And they just sell it to everybody. And that way, they don't really have to make much. I mean, I do own a Soviet-made electric guitar, which is just a hilarious piece of junk, designed by the Soviet radio electronics ministry of whatever the hell it was, with more crap in it. But Okay, they took a shot. But, yeah, nobody buys those guitars. They buy oil and gas. So Putin realizes that and basically runs his country on revenue from oil and gas. And China now is buying everything that Putin can get out of the ground. So they've formed a partnership. The Russians do make a few weapons that are pretty good, although they're buying more weaponry from North Korea than they are really making. So and also China supplying them with electronics to build drones and things like that. But Putin believes that Russia was dealt a bad hand, and that after the fall of the Berlin Wall, that the countries in Eastern Europe that left the Russian sphere now need to be back in. And the whole Crimea thing was just a prelude to what we're going to see in the future, unless somebody steps in and changes that.
Yeah,
and what he's saying is, look, they're for the most part, their manufacturing sucks. They can, and when you think about it here in the United States, we talk about our military and how much we spend on our military, and still there's always the concern. Are we keeping everything updated?
Right.
Are the planes, the repair and maintenance of planes, that's always been a consistent problem that we see. And we're talking about the United States.
Right.
Well, the budget that we have and the technology and the manufacturing we have is so much greater than what Russia has.
Yeah.
And so you look at it and it sort of verifies what I've always thought, that, yeah, they're producing so much oil, they can buy the stuff, but can they maintain it? And do they have enough money to provide the security that, for example, we probably have at most of our military bases? And this is based on what we saw Ukraine just do, which is absolutely, militarily speaking, mind-boggling.
Right.
Yeah. And, again, opens a whole door, and a door, window, whatever, to ask the question, is Russia not as strong as the popular culture makes it out to be,
right,
since the fall of the Soviet Union?
Right. And we saw some of that anecdotally with the reports coming out of that they just didn't have the military leadership. Just the manpower was in shambles when they first went into Ukraine. But then again, the equipment also was breaking down. The trucks were breaking down. The delivery infrastructure for simple things like fuel on the fly for their military was really, again, in shambles. There was, if you think about the MREs in the field, some of them were dated back to 2010, 2012. And if it's outdated as of 2012, that means it was probably manufactured in, 1950.
No, but we had talked about that when the war first started.
Yeah.
Remember? And we just said, and it was pretty common knowledge. Most defense experts were saying, my God, they can't even do which is the simplest, not the simplest part, but because it's tough to resupply, especially when you're at war, but the fact of something that you have to do.
Right. You're not ready to do
right.
that.
You weren't ready to fight a war if you're not ready to constantly supply. Now, it's a tough thing to do, and it takes a lot of manpower to do that. But if you've got a military on the ground, if you've got infantry on the ground and the tanks and everything else, you've got to constantly resupply them. That never stops.
Right.
You've got to get the fuel to them. You've got to get the food to them. You've got to get the bullets to them. You've got to get the everything that you need to fight a war has constantly had to be resupplied, and they were failing with that miserably early on, which is something that surprised a lot of military experts.
Right. It was assumed that they would be more than prepared, and that they would be the giant in this case of going after Ukraine, and that it was going to be. There was a lot of talk early on. Well, this isn't going to fare well for Ukraine.
Well,
and it turns out Zelensky has had the upper hand on a number of things again, I suspect that's due to all of the outside help, but it shows you how powerful Russia is not.
Well, remember, early on, this war is going to be over in 30 days.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
it might 2 weeks, 30
Yep.
days, whatever.
Yep.
Sort of like the you went back to, this is like the United States and Iraq. This thing's going to be over very quickly.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody's just going to surrender. It's
Right.
going to be over.
Right.
And Russia's going to have it. And that didn't happen. But yeah, that was Jeff Skunk Baxter, who's one of the United States' most premier military experts, terrorism experts, missile guidance system experts, and yes, the guitarist from Steely Dan, and what do you call it? The Doobie Brothers. And,
yeah.
And by the way, he still plays. I've seen stuff in his own stuff that he does, his solo stuff.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
866-98 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
Hey, it's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You see that Jamie Dimon is speaking out there and says, we've got to worry. We've got to worry. We've got economic problems coming down the pike. We'll get to that coming up. And what else do you say about? Oh, yeah, we should be stockpiling tanks and missiles, not bitcoins.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would definitely agree on that.
We'll get to that coming up here.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America. Hi. We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara.
Hey. How's it going?
What's going on? How we all doing?
Happy Tuesday, said nobody ever.
All right, our health update.
Yeah.
There's the headline. Daily coffee drinking linked to major health benefit in women as they age.
All right.
The popular, let me turn my light on. So
Okay.
I'm getting old, and I could, the
yes.
light was not proper.
Yeah, right.
From Fox News, a popular morning beverage could do more than provide a perk. It could also help women stay healthy as they age. That's according to a new research from Harvard University, which followed a group of nearly 50,000 women over a 30-year period. The researchers found that drinking coffee every morning could help women stay mentally sharp and physically strong later in life. According to the press release, the benefits were seen in middle-aged women who drank caffeinated coffee. Decaf coffee and tea did not have that same effect. Healthy aging here meant surviving to older age without major chronic diseases and with good physical, mental, and cognitive function, said the research. Importantly, this relationship persisted even after accounting for key lifestyle factors like diet quality, physical activity, and smoking, each of which are also strongly associated with healthy aging in their own right. The women who were qualified, oh, this is really good news.
Okay.
Oh, man, this is good news.
All right.
Women, I mean, why can't this be for men? The women who qualify as healthy agers were found to consume an average of 315 milligrams of caffeine daily, primarily coffee drinking. That's 3 cups. That's over 3 cups of coffee.
Right, yeah.
And it's almost close to 4, maybe.
I think it's about 315. I think it's about 3.
Okay, so it's 100 each in basically a regular cup of coffee?
Or one really large cup. Make it a venti and put 9 shots in it, would you? Yeah.
Okay, here
I think it's what, 105?
95 in a regular cup of coffee, 8-ounce cup.
Yeah, nobody drinks that.
95 milligrams.
Yeah. You got to make it large.
Now, the super coffee that I'll have once in a while, the super coffee, which is basically cold coffee, has like 180.
All right.
And that's pretty good. Wow. Now, listen to this now. This is... If I identify as a woman, will this caffeine help me?
Doubt it.
The women who qualify as healthy agers were found to consume an average of 315 milligrams of caffeine daily, primarily via coffee drinking. Each additional cup of coffee was linked to a 2 to 5% greater chance of healthier aging, the study found. So if you go over 315, it means even more. Now, you're going to be walking around all day like this. You're going to be saying, hey, what's going on here? Yeah, I feel very, very healthy. That's right. Look at my mouth muscles. My mouth muscles keep moving very, very quickly, quicker than you could.
I got to be wondering about your nervous system.
Now, this is interesting.
What?
Although soda also contains caffeine,
right?
Women who drank it every day were shown to have a 20 to 26% reduced chance of healthy aging.
Yeah, it's the caffeine that is naturally occurring in coffee is different than caffeine you get from other drinks. I was told that by, in fact, a doctor the first time I heard it.
They say the health benefits appear specifically to coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
We did not see the same association with decaf coffee, tea. Oh, decaf coffee. Would you feed a dog would you feed a dog, a starving dog, a rubber
How are
bone?
they even still making it? Who?
Yeah.
I'll say this. My wife drinks half and half because of one of her medications. She drinks half calf, I think is what they call it. But the total decaf, yeah, I don't have any use for that. I don't know anybody that does.
They say we didn't see the same associated with decaf coffee, tea, or caffeinated soda, suggesting that coffee's unique combination of bioactive compounds may play a key role, where it's a combination of the caffeine and the actual coffee.
Yeah, and I was told, again, I don't know, that I'm not a scientist, believe it or not, and I was told that the caffeine that's naturally occurring in coffee is different than that you're going to get in like the energy drinks or the sodas and everything else. So, I don't know.
The researcher acknowledged that the study has some limitations. I don't want to hear this.
We don't need limitations.
As with all,
I'd like to limit the limitations.
As with all observational studies, we cannot establish causality, she told Fox News Digital. While we adjusted for many factors, unmeasured confounding is always possible. So there you go. You see, moderate coffee intake may offer some protective benefits when combined with other healthy behaviors such as regular exercise, a healthy diet, and avoiding smoking.
I would say just anecdotal evidence for me, like, the thing, you and I are becoming old guys. And I know the audience is scoffing at the whole becoming old guys. You are old guys. But the whole thing is sitting around, right, drinking coffee. at the local donut shop, go over to the Tim Hortons, sit around and, talk over coffee. And that's kind of been a thing in towns all across America. And for me, if I'm having coffee, if I'm having caffeine, I have to kind of keep moving. I have to be doing something. I couldn't sit around and just sit around and sip coffee and sit there. I've got to work that nervous energy from the caffeine out somehow. So if I'm drinking coffee, it's usually not just because of lack of sleep. That's always in play. It's also because I plan to do something. I want to work that energy. I want to use that energy for being productive somehow.
It's amazing you brought that up because last Saturday when I was in Western New York, when I woke up at the hotel, they had their the hotel coffee.
Yeah.
I had one cup, and it was about 2 hours before I was meeting everybody. So I actually went to Tim Hortons and had a coffee at Tim Hortons.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I did that. Now, they did this. What they're saying is they didn't do this research on men. They did it on women.
Right.
But now, does it help men? And I'm reading here. I decided to put it in AI overview when it comes to men, coffee drinking for men. Now, this may be more important than any benefit that women have.
Oh.
Yes. And this is from AI overview on Google. So
and AI is pretty smart.
AI is never wrong.
Right. Ever.
Yes.
Like men. Never wrong.
Yes.
Right, ladies?
Coffee can provide some benefits for men, including improved erectile function and boosting libido.
We're out of coffee here. Have been for a while.
Maybe a good thing.
We don't.
Moderate coffee consumption also for
here.
men could lower the risk of diabetes and depression, both of which can contribute to erectile dysfunction.
That explains back in the day, it used to be, I guess some people still do it, but after dinner, you'd have a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Before bedtime. So maybe this has always been the case. Maybe it was always known. I'm no doctor. I know that's shocking. I'm just telling you how people act. I'm just telling you what I witnessed on, shows like Leave It to Beaver.
What is it though? I mean, it's I love the taste of coffee. I mean, I don't like it black.
You know what? I'm acquiring a taste for black coffee.
I can handle it. I mean, if it's like I must, then that's fine. But
it's got to be the right black coffee. But I mean, I'm acquiring a taste for. Now the thing is, they say the oxidization of the coffee is what makes it turn bitter. So basically, the air that also makes it cold, get cold and everything else. So if you put it in the right mug with a lid on it and everything else, it helps to keep that flavor longer, keeps it warmer longer, whatever. But for some reason, I've acquired a taste for black coffee. In my entire life, creamer, some kind of sweetener, and then, that was my coffee. But for some reason, I don't know what it is. I've acquired a taste for it. I don't drink a lot of coffee. Having a conversation with a friend this past weekend, working this shift over the years was, you have the caffeine boost, you're going to have the caffeine crash later. And I stay up all day. I stay up until like 3 or 4 in the afternoon most days. So I kind of like to be that even-keeled, kind of that level energy, and so I don't go crazy on coffee. But I do occasionally enjoy a cup. The weekend especially, on Saturday, is kind of when I need my coffee because I flip my schedule and I'm up all day. I'm not, I'm sleeping at night.
So I sleep twice a day.
Mm-hmm.
So when I get up in the morning, yesterday I had 1 cup. Sometimes I'll have 2. And then depending on how I feel when I get up on this shift, I really don't drink coffee here much.
Right.
When you were gone last week, I had one of the days, because it was 3 days. Yeah, 3 days I was on alone. One night I had coffee.
Right.
And they were like, it was like, whoa, I go, I'm going to. But once in a while I have the super coffee that I like, which is roughly two cups more. So the maximum I ever have is 4 cups, and it doesn't really, for example, being a type 2 diabetic, I have no idea whether it helps with that or not. I couldn't tell you. But if I have a cup of coffee, even if I have 2 cups of coffee and take my blood pressure and I'm in a relaxed state, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. I really don't see coffee as effect. Now maybe my body's used to it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're drinking a couple of cups every morning and you do it for the longest time, but I absolutely love coffee. I had no idea. It doesn't. You can't sit there and say that it has a sweet taste to it. Now if you have, if you got flavored, creamer, but
have you seen all the creamers? I mean, they're going crazy.
Oh yeah.
Cookie flavor, donut flavor.
You've got cinnamon roll.
Yeah, and then starting in September, pumpkin this, pumpkin that.
Oh, yeah. My favorite? But when they made it for a short time, just peppermint for the holidays. Then they made a peppermint mocha, and I'm like, no, don't make it too complicated.
Right, yeah.
Just give me some peppermint.
Let's not blend flavors. Yeah, no, it's my oldest daughter. She loves all the different, flavors of coffee. She's a huge coffee buff, and but she likes the flavored creamers.
She's risen to the level of buff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No.
Wow, she's a buff.
Been there. Wow. Probably started drinking it at her senior year in high school, I think.
Yeah, I remember it was Seinfeld where they talked about being a buff, and I don't think I've ever been a buff.
Yeah, no,
I'm from Buff.
Yeah,
but I've never been a buff.
Never been a buff. She's a buff,
but I've been there.
She comes from a long line of buffers.
I grew up in Buff.
Yeah, we have buffers going back generations. We're big buffers, which is interesting because Jerry, Seinfeld, comedians in cars getting coffee. And he talks about, he just loves all the different coffees. They go to a different diner or whatever, and they'll sit down and, he just talks about how much he loves coffee.
And everybody listening right now is a Red Eye Radio buff.
They are.
Yeah.
Right. And many are Seinfeld buffs.
Yes. 866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, we'll hear from J.P. Morgan Chase GEO Jamie Dimon, who was at the Reagan Foundation Reagan National Economic Forum a couple of days ago, and it was they streamed it live on YouTube and watched part of it. And it was pretty good. A couple of things he talked about after he was on there. He was on Fox Business on Monday. With Mornings with Maria, and said it's a very big deal, the debt. He goes, it is a real problem, but one day the bond markets are going to have a tough time. I don't know if it's 6 months or 6 years. The real focus should be growth, pro-business, proper deregulation, permitting reform, getting rid of blue tape, getting skills in schools, get that growth going. That's the best way. He said then reform some of these programs that everybody knows can be reformed properly, adding that these forms can be structured in a way to lower the cost of those programs while mitigating the impact on the poor, the elderly, and those dealing with illnesses while ensuring that the programs remain sustainable. He's talking about Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security.
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about,
right.
So people know what to get blunt on it. And he had some very blunt things to say, you know, saying China isn't the biggest problem. We are. Getting our fiscal house in order is the biggest problem that we face.
I would agree.
Now.
I would agree.
Now,
because we can't take on a China before we do that. That has to be the immediate goal.
The other thing is, he said the emphasis of our country should be on national security and resilient chains versus cryptocurrency. He says we should be stockpiling tanks and missiles, not bitcoins. He said missiles and tanks should take precedent over Bitcoin. You said something that struck me earlier. We should be stockpiling. What did you say? I said, quote, not bitcoins, but bullets, tanks, missiles. You point out national security is a critical thing. So the most important thing to be in trade is going to be protecting our own national security. And that's around resilient supply chains for medical ingredients, for anything that goes into our F-35 rare earths and related. Think of the AI chips, things like that. We say, yeah, this is important for American national security. We need resilient supply chains, and then we need to do things to help the military, which is we don't keep productive capability empty. So all of that, so all of us do that in our businesses, but their missile capability, we have to plant, we have a plant building missiles, but you have to double, triple production. We don't have plants and they're ready to go, and we need that, and that should be part of our planning. We don't allow enough flexibility for military. The world has changed. You see what's happening with these drones, and what you need is very different this month and even 2 months ago. So they need more flexibility to buy this, not buy that. We need to spend more money. We need to do budgeting. Whoa! We'll get to this and more coming up.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. So, yeah, just interesting, JD, I almost said JD Diamond. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon was at the Reagan National Economic Forum and had some interesting things to say about the challenges we face here in the United States.
The way I look at it, the big picture is the tectonic plates are shifting. We got to get our heads wrapped around that. Those tectonic plates are the geopolitics with these terrible wars, terrible proxy terrorist activity around the world, North Korea, the potential proliferation of nuclear weapons over time, which is the greatest threat to mankind. And then you have the other tectonic shift is the global economy. So the global military umbrella of America, and then the global economy, of which trade is a part. You know, the other parts are do people want to partner with you? Do you have your alliances? Do you have investment agreements? And all those various things, and they're changing. And then our debt, which you just heard a bunch of folks talk about eloquently, it's large, and it's not just us. We added $10 trillion in 5 years. We have, you had Reagan up there talking about deficits. The debt to GDP was 35%, and the deficit was 3.5%. Today, it's 100% debt to GDP net, and a deficit of almost 7%, highest peacetime ever. And when the CBO does their numbers, which I don't really trust, by the way, they should do the stress test. Like, what happens if we go into a recession? That 7% will be 10%. And so we have problems, and we got to deal with them. And then the biggest one, underlying both that, is the enemy within. I'm not as worried about China. China is a potential adversary. They're doing a lot of things well. They have a lot of problems. What I really worry about is us. Can we get our own act together, our own values, our own capability, our own management? What you heard today on stage was the amount of mismanagement is extraordinary. By state, by city, for pensions, and that stuff is going to kill us. And, I always get asked this question, are we going to be the reserve currency? And no. If we are not the preeminent military and the preeminent economy in 40 years, we will not be the reserve currency. That's a fact. Just read history. You know, now I think we will be. You know, Warren Buffett here would tell you we're enormously resilient. I agree with that. I think this time is different. This time we have to get our act together, and we have to do it very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that's it has to be the concern and priority. But we look at that, and our fiscal house, well, the big, beautiful bill is a great example of the lack of political will to get our fiscal house in order. And it starts from the ground up. If all the constituents for the GOP, for every House member, were all screaming about this, it wouldn't be just Chip Roy up there. It wouldn't be just Massey. It would be every one of them in the GOP saying, we're not going to do this unless we can actually make some cuts. But you have too many rank-and-file Republicans that don't care about the national debt, don't care about deficits, and that's greatly concerning because if Republicans don't, then who does? It's a small group of us, and you can see that by the small representation we have on Capitol Hill.
You know, you look at the history of the nation. We had very, very relative little debt because the federal government didn't do nearly what the federal government does. Now, you know, we had talked about when Trump had talked about the tariffs back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and that could again run the entire country because we did it back then. The federal government wasn't close to being as large as it was now. Yeah. They were involved in nothing compared to what they're involved with today. So,
right.
As we said at that point, and we went through the actual statistics of what it was, and you could see how impossible it was. But that's the growth of the federal government. The thing is, you have at least, you have the discussion going on right now between Republicans, about the rescission cuts and everything else. I mean, I will admit, when I saw the rescission cuts, well, the first rescission's $9.8 billion or whatever it was, for NPR. Did you see that yesterday?
Yeah.
And I just went, okay, it's just the first one.
Yeah.
But still, when you saw $9.8 billion, you might have well said 2 cents.
Right. Exactly.
Because it's like nothing. But if you had some Democrats that were looking at least you have some Republicans. DOJ, again, was an effort to look and say, look, here are the problems, here's what we face here, here's where we can be more efficient, and here's where we can cut. Now, see, the Democrats aren't saying, okay, because the Republicans are at least saying they've got the votes to say, let's stop giving public assistance to able-bodied men. Because if you can't do that, you can't cut it all. Well, the Democrats are lying about it.
Yeah.
They're just saying generically all these incredible Medicaid cuts. They're not talking specifically of where these cuts are going. And so if no Democrat wants any type of fiscal sanity at all, again, the Republicans don't go nearly as far as what's necessary, but the Democrats are like, to hell with that, blow the whole damn thing up. We don't care. We don't care about debt. We don't care about anything.
Right.
Now, the Republicans are not where they used to be. I look at Republicans and say Republicans are where Democrats were 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
They would speak about cutting things, but did they really cut a lot? No, not really. Democrats now aren't even talking about any type of cuts.
Mm-hmm.
It's about spending. And you're right. It's eventually going to hit you.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no way it doesn't. And I think right now with everything in play, I don't know what changes that. The ultimate crash, the ultimate threshold, again, of not being able to sustain the interest on the national debt.
And Jimmy Dimon talked about it. He says, quote, I think there are some reforms can take place. We're not taking benefits out of poor people or sick people or old people. You're just putting rules in place that make it more reasonable, less fraud, less waste, less abuse. You can't get the Democrats to agree with that.
No, you can't. No.
I think all these things need to be done, and then we can conquer that problem. The federal government is projected to run roughly $2 trillion budget deficits annually for the next few years, which is historically large considering the deficit was $1 trillion in the fiscal year 2019, the last pre-pandemic fiscal year. Understand, though, $1 trillion of that, $1.2 trillion right now of that is interest.
Yeah. Right.
But there doesn't really seem to be the public isn't there. I saw the other day. Did you see the thing the other day where I forgot who wrote the article that said if Republicans don't do the tax cuts, they're going to be hit for it because Americans want the tax cuts. They want the tax cuts. They want the tax cuts. And I went, nothing about Americans wanting any type of deficit reduction at all. None.
Right.
And I don't see it. I know it's not there.
Well, no, this is why the GOP knows, the majority of the House members know that they're fine politically. They don't have to cut. In fact, it's not about the cuts.
Well, he does make a case when he talks about, we don't need a crypto reserve. We're going to take taxpayer dollar money and buy cryptocurrency.
Right. Yeah, no.
The hell are you talking about?
Absolutely not.
It's insane, and there seems to be this thing of that's where to go, that's where to go, that's where to go, that's where to go.
Well, no, but it reeks of Washington jumping on, again, another trend. No. Absolutely not.
Nope.
Look, the sure bet has always been the U.S. Treasury up until recently. And that shaky ground, I was reading where Warren Buffett, just in the final quarter of last year and first quarter of this year, put so much, I mean, a massive chunk into Treasury bills. And, in fact, I think it said if Berkshire were a country, it would be the 11th largest holder of U.S. Treasuries.
Wow.
Just, I mean, mind-boggling. But you look at the global response, again, to what's going on in the trade wars and the treasuries and everything else, that has to be a great concern, too. So when we talk crypto, it's like, oh, my gosh, come on. Leave that to the private sector. If people want to put their own money into it, they can put their own money into it. Yep. No taxpayer money goes into that. None.
Zero.
And we shouldn't be in a situation where we're concerned about the Treasury markets because we shouldn't be at 36, headed toward $37 trillion in debt as a nation.
Ron Johnson makes the great point. Go back to 2019 levels and take into consideration inflation.
Yeah.
So add inflation to that. And I don't know what the overall inflation would be, which means you'd increase the budget by 20%, right?
Yeah, right.
But not where it is now.
Right.
He's saying, he goes, that's actually not that hard to do. Can't do it. Can't do it.
Right.
Nope. Because even if you attempt to get rid of fraud, waste, inefficiencies, abuse, and things that are just downright dumb, the Democrats don't want to cut anything. Zero. Nothing can be cut. To the point where you've got Republicans that are afraid to come out and say, no, able-bodied males, able-bodied people, it ends today.
Right.
Sir, you really can't end anything today. It has to be down the line a little bit. And it can't just be they have to work. If they do volunteer work or they go to school, no.
All the green projects.
Yeah, the green project. Well, we're going to start next year or the year. No, now.
If they've already started, if they start the project in 2025, then they're good.
Which means what?
They're going to jump on the project. They're going to break ground.
Right. He's going to jump to get the free money. It's
Exactly.
just like, and that's
You're
the
incentivizing them to grab at the free money.
Yep.
Instead of just saying, no, we're taking it all back. We're not going to do this. We're not going to keep pouring money down the drain. Just insane.
The Babylon Bees headline. Republicans unveil new plan to fix national debt sometime after the return of Christ. Oh, yeah, Paul Ryan already tried that plan.
It's so funny. We go back to that Paul Ryan plan years ago, and it was going to be a 30-year plan. Liberals were like, he wants to kill old people. Conservatives were like, he doesn't want to really get this done.
Think about this. Think about this, though. We'd be 17 years into the Paul Ryan 30-year plan right now.
We would.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great point.
No, we wouldn't. It would have never lasted.
It never would have. It would have. Yeah, it would have been repealed. Yeah.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I did think, though, with the Senate and the Congress being back this week, and the Senate, I kept thinking to myself, okay, put that chair in the Titanic over here.
Exactly.
Then take this chair and put it over there.
Yeah, it's going to be fine.
And I move this chair over here. That's the virtue signaling.
No, it is. No, it's exactly it. I'm not going to be moving this glug, glug, glug chair, glug, 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 one more glug, glug, glug inch, glug, 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 glug. Well, good for you.
If the budget was the Titanic, Leonardo DiCaprio was real smart for being one of the first ones to go.
Right, exactly. You know what, Rose? There was room.
Rose is like,
there was room on
push
the rack.
me off.
There was a room.
Yeah, I thought that too. I really did.
There was room.
You could have put him on there.
You couldn't scoot over just a little bit. There was room.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's only his wife. Don't worry about that. He's good.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
You know, I remember the movie All the President's Men?
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, the whole thing with Watergate and Robert Redford. And remember they would have the great big, all the editors from the Washington Post would be sitting there, all the actors playing, whatever. And they'd all be sitting there discussing what the stories are going to be, how they're going to put the stories and everything else. And so we know that, newspapers and websites, major websites, whatever, they do that. Where are we going to put what's going to be the story, where we're going to put it, right? That's what they do.
Right.
They sit in a room and do it. And so this is something that we've talked about before, but I caught two conservative media both doing it. You ready? Here we go.
Okay.
You want to see the New York? First, start with the New York Post. Want to see the headline? Want to hear the headlines?
All right.
All right, here we go. Here are the headlines.
Okay.
Burning with hate. Colorado terror attack suspect was in the United States illegally after overstaying his visa. All right. Okay. Important story, right?
Yeah.
Jill Biden's work husband may have played a key role in covering up Joe Biden's cognitive decline.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Female Oregon athletes refuse to share podium with trans competitor, leave high school track and field a championship. Lines of communication. Rubio doubles down on Trump's call for peace after Ukraine wipes out Russia's doomsday nuclear bombers. And then you keep moving down a little bit. This is 60. Bikini-clad Brooke Shields celebrates milestone victory on beach vacation. I don't care.
The first question I have is she only 60? Thought she was like 80.
I don't.
It's only because she's been around so long.
Who cares?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to we've talked about this before because Fox News normally does this. Fox News, here's all these important headlines. Then all of a sudden it just appears this hot actress in her skimpy bikini. Like, is this the algorithm for conservative men that all these people, while sitting there in a room deciding where to place the stories, we got to get a bikini story in there?
Oh, yeah. No, it's a thing, clearly, because they're all doing it.
Well, so I did that for the New York Post, right?
Okay.
So let's go to Fox News.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hang on one second here. I just lost it.
All right.
Oh, man. There it is. Okay.
If Brooke Shields is 60, how old are her eyebrows?
Okay, here we go, all right? Now we go to Fox News.
All right.
USAID paperwork found in car of suspect in Boulder, Colorado protest attack.
Right.
White House mocks liberal newspaper for being puzzled at the drop in fentanyl trafficking. Beloved budget retailer reopening stores in 9 states after filing for bankruptcy. Border czar convinced U.S. will see major terror attack because of Biden administration's border policies. Record-breaking number of illegal alien arrests made in blue state ICE dragnet. Pennsylvania senator. Bucks party on border, Israel, and everything else. Brooke Shields stuns in bikini photos as she celebrates turning 60 years old.
Again with the Brooke Shields?
Yeah.
Same thing?
Both of them with Brooke Shields. Brooke Shields in a bikini. Oh, my God, I woke up. I woke up at 10 o'clock last night saying, I don't care about the news. I got to see Brooke Shields at 60 years old in a bikini.
Yeah.
Not.
Wow. All right.
And so my point is, did they sit in a room and decide what celebrity? Now, New York Post and Fox News settled on the same thing. We got to have that Brooke Shields in a bikini photo on our front page.
Well, here's the thing. If the demographics were different and it was women that they were targeting, conservative women, would that last story be Newt Gingrich stuns in his Speedo?
No.
Huh?
No. It'd be the one I saw yesterday, or was it the day before?
Yeah.
Rick Springfield at 75 singing with his shirt off.
By the way, it's only because he forgot to put one on.
It's like,
it's not like the old days. Yeah, it's like yeah. We don't need that. Yeah. Put it on and button it all the way up.
Is this a new thing now for conservative media? Let's do the hard news coverage and then old people partially naked.
Yes. I'm sorry about the Newt Gingrich Speedo thing. I know you're going to have people are going to have trouble scrubbing that from their brain.
You know, I just didn't think about it until right now.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Now, I'm conservative.
Uh-huh.
And when I go to the Fox or New York, I want news.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't want that, I go to Cinemax Friday night. I don't even have cable.
Is Cinemax still even on?
I don't even know.
Cinemax. Cinemax. Yeah.
I think in the 90s, every Cinemax soft porn movie had Gene Simmons' wife
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah, right.
I can't even think of her name.
Yeah. Shannon.
Shannon Tweed. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. Yes, that's right.
I would like to thank you for bringing up Shannon Tweed, Gary. This is not Gene Simmons. I'm Benjamin Netanyahu, filling in for Gene Simmons.
But I get such a big kick out of it because that's what I'm thinking. Do they plan this? Or do they sit in a meeting and go, we got to make sure that we got to make sure, look, put the hard news in. What do we got? What do we got? What do we got?
No,
what do we got? What do we got?
Everything is about the clicks. And you know another thing, too.
I didn't click it.
No, but our production staff is
I had
making
no
it up
interest
for
in
you. Yeah.
clicking to see her in a bikini.
Yeah.
None.
No.
Brooke Shields, that is.
Right. We're talking about it, and the clicks are going through the roof. New York Post calls. Hey, guys, thanks a lot for that.
Well, then I'm wrong.
Well, no, we are wrong because they're putting it up.
They're doing it because
it's every day there is.
Yeah,
I think one I saw
day,
a couple of weeks ago was Salma Hayek was nervous about doing the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition for this year. And I thought, this year? This year?
They're still doing
You mean this one? First of all, they're still doing that. And second of all, I mean, she looks great. But, I mean, it was, I don't know how old she is. She's, I think, in her 50s.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought she was.
Yeah.
I was going to say my dad would call her a cougar. No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Right. So and it was, I thought to myself, all right, that's part of it's not, I don't even know that it's clickbaiting. You just put it there and they're going to click on it. You don't even have to just mention so-and-so in a bikini. I mean, all right, boom, there you get it. It's because it's everywhere. It's on all of them. So it's working.
What was it? Was it the Daily Caller that used to have it too?
Oh, I don't know.
The Daily Caller was one of them.
Yeah.
It was like you throw serious stories like hot bikini.
Well, but then I've noticed the weather clickbaiting. Your area could get thunderstorms. Find out when. I live in Tornado Alley. And it's maddening because with weather, that's important information.
Yeah,
and in Tornado Alley, we take the dangerous weather very seriously. So it should be very clear. But that doesn't matter. The clicks, because they get the ads, and you got to scroll through the ads, and they have the pop-up ads and everything else.
You know how bad it's getting? Every time there's a thunderstorm now here, I've got people on Facebook from around the country asking me if I'm okay. I wake up, it's like, well,
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
It's
even for when it's not your area,
right.
It makes the news.
They're like, are you okay? Did you get through this? I'm like, what are you talking about? I just woke up.
Right. Yeah.
I heard some distant thunder, but yeah, we heard that there were thunderstorms. Well, there's always thunderstorms.
Right. If it's a tornado, that's one thing,
Yeah.
To check in on people. But it's kind of this dynamic now because they understand. And we do know this from what we do, that when there's severe weather, the local stations, TV and radio, the viewership, listenership goes through the roof, as it should, because people want to know what to do. They want to know what the danger is, what the threat is, and that's a good thing that people are tuning in. But when you try and capitalize on that and kind of pointing to, well, there could be. And the way that they're phrasing it, it's, I look at it and say, no, it's, you have to draw a line somewhere. And I got to where there were certain sites that were doing this, and I thought, nope, not going to click through. I know where to go for the weather. I follow the weather actively, and I'm pretty proactive about it. But, and but it seems like everything is about the click through. They got to get you there. Another thing, too, is it's the other day I clicked on something. I forgot what it was. And it wasn't like this obscure website. It was, I forget. I think it was people.com, the old People magazines of people.com or something like that. A mainstream website gets plenty of traffic. And then the takeover ads you couldn't even scroll through the page. It was insane.
Oh.
We're in the advertising business. I don't have a thing against advertising. But can I read something? Can I just scroll through the page?
Well,
I don't mind having to scroll past an ad.
Well, what happens is because an ad will appear, and then you click that off, and you start another ad appears.
Yes,
and it's like, well, I'm done. I never read the article.
Right.
I never really pay attention to
I back out of
the commercials.
So many websites now because you can't stay there. You can't read it. You can't get the content that you're there for.
Here's an idea for the New York Post and Fox and others.
Mm-hmm.
Women in bikinis in bad weather.
There you go.
It killed two birds with one stone.
Okay, we're going to see that. Now we'll see it. Somebody's, they're listening.
Brooke Shields at 60 on the beach in a thunderstorm.
That's right.
With large hail coming her way.
That's right. Your area could get women in bikinis and thunderstorms today. Find out when. What?
Stand by for Brooke NATO.
Yes. A 20% chance of bikinis today. Increasing to a 40% in the afternoon.
All right.
We'll try to mild interest overnight with renewed interest tomorrow and a greater chance of bikinis.
We'll try to get serious next. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at JJ Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. Due to safety concerns, many motor carriers have policies that limit or prohibit the use of cruise control. If your motor carrier does allow you to use cruise control, you should only use it in good driving conditions during daylight hours and on roads that have light traffic, few curves or hills, and a consistent speed limit. Never use cruise control when operating in adverse driving conditions, including wet, icy, or slippery roads, during rush hour in heavy traffic or on congested highways, at night, or when you're tired or fatigued. During all of these driving scenarios, you want to be controlling and adjusting your speed as you drive instead of having to suddenly brake if you encounter an obstacle. In the case of a slippery road surface, you want to be able to slow your vehicle by not accelerating instead of using the brakes whenever possible. This tip was brought to you by JJ Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Hey, it's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, Senator Ron Johnson proposes a line-by-line cuts to pass Trump's big, beautiful bill. I don't think that's going to happen. Tim Walz says Harris campaign media strategy fell way short. Former vice presidential candidate Governor Tim Walz said the Kamala Harris campaign's media strategy fell short during an interview last week, criticizing the campaign's focus on traditional media venues during the campaign. As podcast host and former Montana Senator John Tester argued, that the campaign did not use Walz effectively. Walz said his argument spoke to a broader point that the Democrat Party not entering every media environment, including podcast and local media. He said, my God, they're not watching Meet the Press. They're listening to you guys as they're going somewhere listening. They still don't get it.
No.
It's not just about the podcasts.
Nope.
It's not just about where you go.
Nope.
It all comes down to the fact that you suck on what you stand for.
Yep. It's the issues.
Yep. They just don't get it. They're running around like mice in a maze.
Well, it's
not being able to get out, running around in the same dang circle, thinking that our message is right. We just haven't found the conduit to message correctly.
Right. If only we had our own Joe Rogan. You had the Joe Rogan for the longest time. If only we had this, if only we had, again, they really did believe that they owned everything. They controlled the messaging. They controlled how people talked. They controlled social media because, they did. The FBI had a second headquarters at Twitter for a while. So they were really of the mindset, the political machine on the left was really of the mindset that, man, we got this down. We don't need anything. We can basically throttle anybody who speaks against us, and we'll use this tactic forever until Elon Musk decides to spend way too much money on buying Twitter and then exposing it with the Twitter files. I think that was a huge thing beyond what he's done for free speech. It exposes where the left was, what their mentality was, and how they thought they had won. And this is further indication of that. If we just control the message, no, it's the content of the message. It's the people that say, well, money has too much of a place in politics and blah, 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 the whole populist thing. It's about what you spend the money on. If you spend the money on a crap message, you're not going to do very well. It's if you have the biggest podcast in the world, which I guess is Joe Rogan, and he were on your side, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do okay. Just ask Bernie. Because Joe Rogan was on Bernie's side back in 2016.
And Bernie was on.
Yep.
And Bernie didn't become president because he was on Joe Rogan.
Exactly. Those are the things that they don't get. If we can but they still want to control the messaging. They want to control the language and how everybody talks. But what they don't want to control is where they are in the issues. They don't want to change any of that.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, so reading this article here, Tim Walz says Harris' campaign media strategy fell way short. Said, my God, they're not watching Meet the Press. They're listening to you guys, meaning podcasters, as they're going somewhere else. Listening, he was on the John Tester podcast. He said, quote, I think you've got to flood the zone. And I would argue that we didn't see, the vice president when she got in front of people. And I watched her talking to young people. She was magnetic with them. She was optimistic. She was hopeful. But in today's world, you've got to have a lot of that or it all gets lost in the noise. And if you think you're just going to do a, 60 minutes interview and that's going to get across, boy, that's not it. Walz said he didn't agree with those, arguing that the Democratic Party needed to find a Joe Rogan on the left, but he said the party needs to be in places where a reach of somebody like Joe Rogan is getting out there. Harris's 60 Minutes interview became the basis of the lawsuit filed by Trump against CBS and its parent company. But here's where Walz has it wrong again. He's constantly wrong. There was no Republican afraid of his unique form of masculinity.
Yeah, no.
He was not speaking. He did not have the ability to speak code about football and trucks to men.
No.
If you do, the jazz hands are not the way to get there.
No.
But the fact is, if Harris went on and did 100 times more interviews than she did,
It would have been a million times worse.
It would have been a disaster.
Well, he mentions the 60 Minutes interview as if that was a bright point.
Right. J.D. Vance, during the campaign, went on everywhere.
Yep.
He went everywhere.
Yep.
To, it didn't matter, into enemy territory.
Yep.
Trump's always done that to at times to his detriment, but he's gotten a lot better at it.
Mm-hmm.
And now he doesn't care who he talks to. He doesn't care.
Right.
Doesn't care.
Right.
I'm going to promote whatever I believe wherever I am.
Yep.
That's what you got to do.
How many pressers has he had in the Oval Office?
Yeah.
My gosh.
Harris couldn't do that.
No. Nope. The more exposure she had, the worse it got.
Harris couldn't do that. Walz couldn't do that.
Nope.
He couldn't walk into enemy territory. We're talking political.
Right.
Political enemy territory. He wouldn't do that every day.
Nope.
Harris, for gosh sakes, she could never do that.
No.
She was rumbling, bumbling, and stumbling.
Yeah. And then laughing.
And then she couldn't do
laughter.
it.
But and remember the CBS having to edit the interview, having to edit the answer because she went on forever. She would, again, the word salads just became almost legendary, not in a good way. And politically, if you have nothing to be afraid of and you stand on your convictions, it's why J.D. Vance could go anywhere. He could talk to anybody. He could answer any question and take them on. And what you saw, too, one of the, he mentions there, Tim Walz, they're not watching Meet the Press. There's a reason. Because post Tim Russert, Meet the Press became filled with activists, a whole line of activists, including Kristen Welker, all of them, Chuck Todd. They were activists. When you had Tim Russert at that desk, he worked hard at being devil's advocate in that moment, depending, it didn't matter who you were. And he would say, all right, you said this then, you're saying something different now, explain it. And he did the work. You didn't know where he stood politically. He didn't need to be an activist. He did the work. So Meet the Press is a joke. The liberal activist media is a joke. But that's telling that even the left in the media couldn't do it for them. They couldn't get it done for them because they weren't capable. They don't have the convictions. And any radical convictions they have, they know politically you can't get away with. In fact, the greatest example of that is the fact that Kamala Harris tried to convince people she was stronger on the border than Donald J. Trump.
Yeah. That was the first commercial that came out, and we got the biggest kick out of it. I'll never forget you and I looking at each other going, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
She thinks this is going to work? And then remember a couple of weeks later, they had to back off from it?
Mm-hmm.
She had to back off from it. She's now, that ad is now not playing, and she's backing off of it because nobody bought it.
No.
And
No.
it's so stupid. The Democrats just don't seem to well, some do. We'll get to this, the audio coming up here in just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Very few. But, Walz, for example, he's delusional.
Yeah.
He's delusional because he believes that he actually believes that the Democrats thought that he had the type of masculinity and he could talk football and trucks and he could get men to vote Democrat.
Right.
It's absolutely delusional.
Yeah.
You lost because you suck on the issues. You're as radical as can be.
Yep.
It's that simple.
Yep.
This is some audio from Democratic Representative Richie Torres from New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he was voted in 2021, refused to join the squad. I almost said the View. Oh, not much of a difference, is there?
Well.
And has been staunchly pro-Israel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has not called for a ceasefire, believes that they should defeat Hamas. He's a Democrat. Now, the thing that you go, oh, God, is he's always said he believes in a two-state solution. Well, that's delusional because neither side has ever wanted that.
Right.
So that in itself, but he's on Israel. He's been extremely strong, extremely. He voted for the Lake and Riley Act. He believes that Democrats are too radical. He initially supported defund the police. And then by 2022 saying, this is useless, it's got to go away. Nobody actually wants this.
Right.
So I think he was in in 2020, was he in office at that time? I think he didn't get into 21. So he supported that time. That was a reaction of all Democrats, but then quickly was one of the first to say, nope, this is ridiculous. Nobody wants this. It's not working. Nobody wants fewer police.
Right.
And he goes, a majority of Democrats don't want fewer police. So some of what he believes is based in reality, which is very, very rare for a Democrat. But here he is when he was talking about what his party has to do.
I feel like there is a recognition that we went too far left on immigration. But, I feel there needs to be a fundamental restructuring within the Democratic Party, a return to a rational center. But, I worry that, Donald Trump is so aggressive that he is provoking a response.
Yeah.
That is, there's a divide between what I would say two teams in the Democratic Party. There's team restraint and team resistance, right? There are those in team resistance who feel like we should react hysterically to everything that Donald Trump says or does. And then there are those who feel like we should pick and choose our battles and be strategic. But I worry that the momentum is on the side of hysterical, hyperbolic resistance, and the enormous expenditure of time and energy and resistance might crowd out the restructuring and moderation that needs to happen within the Democratic Party.
He said when they went too far left, they didn't go too far. It wasn't a leftist position. It was an open borders position. It was, let's create the problem.
Yeah.
It wasn't, due to the fact that we were too far left, just the organic circumstances on the border. No. The Democratic Party created the problem at the border.
Yeah.
As we now know, you didn't need to solve the border problem. You did not need comprehensive immigration reform.
No.
It was simply a president enforcing the current law of the United States, which Joe Biden did the opposite. He didn't abide by the law.
Right.
It's that simple.
Right.
But the problem is when Representative Torres talks about the fact that they've got to move to the middle, the members of Congress don't want to. He may want to. They don't want to.
Nope.
And what it comes down to is the Republican Party is a party based on people that believe in the majority of what their party is promoting. Not necessarily all of it, but the majority. Nobody's going to agree with everything. But the majority of it. What do Democrats believe? Anything that Trump says sucks and we have to go crazy about it, right?
Yep. And then you get into the radical things that they're fighting for. The legal battles that they are in. It's important to point out that some of the states, the blue states in these radical legal battles, this is not something that just goes away because the party says, well, we're not winning, so let's change this. No, they're fighting for these things. For kids to be able to decide to remove their own genitalia. They're fighting to get obscene material in front of 5-year-old eyes. They fought to open the border. This isn't something that, well, maybe politically this will win. Yeah, the border had a political side effect. They were hoping to pad their numbers in their voter base. And they created a massive, massive national security issue and danger for the American people. The things they're fighting for are greatly unsettling to families. Coming after your children, unsettling. Spending to bring about record inflation for a generation to the point that you have to decide between groceries and back-to-school items, greatly unsettling for a family. An open border where criminals are coming in, and they're still fighting to bring gang members, foreign gang members who are here illegally, back to the U.S. after they're deported. That's greatly unsettling for families. Higher crime in cities. That's greatly unsettling for families. What they don't understand is that they've come in and set fire to the very foundation that these American families rely on.
I'll show you one thing where Walls partly is correct. He said, I think we probably should have just rolled the dice and done the town halls where voters may say, you're full of the S word. I don't believe in you. I think there could have been more of that. He argued that Democrats are more cautious in engaging with the media than Republicans, which is true. Because Republicans know what they believe. When you don't know, when you're a Harris or you're a Waltz, and you're saying, we know what we believe, we're as radical as you can get, but we can't promote this.
Right.
We've got to pretend we're in the center, but we're not sure if that's focus group well right now. And so unless we find out how we can actually explain this and get away with it without being called out on our hypocrisy, that you actually don't believe this, you believe that.
Right.
That's different. If you get called as a hypocrite, you don't actually believe that. You're being a hypocrite. You've always stood for this.
Yep.
That's different from somebody who's held a long-held belief who you disagree with and you say you're wrong, and they say, no, you're wrong because of this, and this, and that's the problem that they have.
Right.
Republicans are willing to go into enemy territory because they know what they believe, and they know what they're going to promote that they believe because it's one and the same.
You can talk about your convictions at any turn with anybody at any time.
You don't need a script.
You don't need a script.
When you've been a politician for 20 years, you don't need a script.
And you don't need CBS editing your answers for you.
And when you do it for 20 years, you're just better at the word salad.
Yep.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today because our show ends in an hour. And we make it so convenient for you. If you can't listen to the entire show, or you miss portions of the show, or you hear us talking about portions of the show, and you've only caught an hour, and you say, wow, I would really like to hear that. Well, you can listen to our podcast. We record the whole show, and it comes on right after the show's over on our Red Eye Radio app. And if for some reason you can't listen to one of our great radio stations overnight, for some reason live, well, you can listen live because we stream live all 5 hours.
Right there. It's right there on the app for you.
Mike Rowe says we don't have enough workers already. Skilled workers. We'll get to that coming up.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.